All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We are hopping into the time machine and we're setting the dials for 1984. Now, why are we doing that? Because hidden inside a shareholder letter from that year is an absolute masterclass in investing that is just as powerful today as it was back then. So let's dive in.
First things first, to really get the genius in this letter, you have to understand the world it was written in. You need the context, so let's set the stage. Okay, picture this. The year is 1984. The economy is absolutely roaring back to life. Confidence is through the roof, and the vibe is just pure, relentless optimism. The markets are on fire, and there's this feeling that the good times are here to stay. But in a quiet little office in Omaha, Nebraska, the world's greatest investor is looking at his company's results and feeling, well, deeply unimpressed. And right here, right out of the gate, we get our first huge lesson. While the rest of the world was celebrating, Buffett opens his letter with this incredibly sober line. I mean, $152 million. That sounds amazing, right? But to Buffett, it was mediocre. And why? Because the absolute number is totally meaningless without context.
See, this is the number that actually mattered. Berkshire's net worth grew by 13.6%. That was the real story. It wasn't about the big flashy dollar amount, it was all about the rate of return on his shareholders' capital. And when you compare that to his historical average of over 22%, well, you can see why he called it mediocre. This is our first real peek into how this man's brain works.
So that incredibly honest assessment kind of sets the stage for everything that comes next, which is a look inside Buffett's mental toolkit. Because tucked away in this letter from 1984 are the core principles that guided him then and, more importantly, can guide us today. These aren't just rules, they're powerful ways of thinking. First up, the famous circle of competence, and it's a really simple but profound idea. You don't have to be an expert on everything. In fact, you get a massive advantage by just admitting what you don't know and sticking only to the businesses you can genuinely, truly understand inside and out. It's how you avoid making those huge, catastrophic mistakes.
And here's the proof, straight from the man himself. In this little business wanted ad he puts at the end of the letter, he spells it out. He's not trying to chase the next big tech revolution. He's looking for simple businesses he can get his head around. He literally practices what he preaches. Okay, next up in the toolkit is the economic moat. Think of a medieval castle with a huge, deep, alligator-infested moat around it. That is exactly what you want in a business, some kind of durable competitive advantage that protects its profits from all the invaders trying to take its market share. That moat is what lets a company earn high returns for decades.
And he explains this so brilliantly using his investment in the Buffalo Evening News. He points out something fascinating. Back in 1984, before the internet, if you were the only newspaper in town, it almost didn't matter if your paper was great or just meh. You owned the moat. You were the information hub, and that gave you this incredible pricing power with both readers and advertisers. Okay, so next up is something you almost never ever see in the corporate world, but it's a quality that Buffett puts on full display in this letter. A radical, almost embarrassing willingness to admit when he's wrong. And that brings us to a really critical question for any investor. Is it their fancy PowerPoint presentations, their soaring promises about the future? Well, Buffett suggests a totally different way to measure them: intellectual honesty. This table is just incredible. I mean, most CEOs would bury this, but Buffett does the exact opposite. He shows his shareholders the results he reported, and then, right next to them, the corrected, and much worse, numbers. He flat out admits he was consistently too optimistic, calling his own errors substantial and embarrassing. This is so much more than just honesty. It's a masterclass in building genuine trust. And to really drive the point home, he tells this brilliant, darkly funny story. A guy's dad dies, he pays a huge funeral bill, but then these small monthly bills for $15 just keep showing up. Confused, he calls his sister, who says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, we buried Dad in a rented suit." For Buffett, this was the perfect analogy for those hidden, recurring costs that can kill a business. It's a lesson you won't forget. This brings us to what I think is the single most important lesson in this entire letter. It's a powerful, simple rule you can use to evaluate the leadership of literally any company you invest in. Let's call it the CEO's $1 test. Okay, so let's start with a basic question. A company's profits, technically, they belong to you, the shareholder, right? Management can either give them to you as a dividend, or they can keep them to reinvest in the business. So when should you let them keep your money? Buffett breaks down the logic so beautifully. A company has earnings. It's got two choices.
pay you, or reinvest? The decision should be dead simple. Management should only keep that money if, and only if, they can create more value with it inside the company than you could by taking the cash and investing it yourself. And this right here is the ultimate test. It's not about ego, it's not about building a bigger empire. It's a simple, sacred duty. For every single dollar management decides to keep, they better have a reasonable expectation of creating at least $1 of market value for you, the owner.
That's it. That's the magic number. $1 in for at least $1 of value out. It seems so obvious, but you would be shocked at how many managers completely fail this test. They pour shareholder money into projects with lousy returns, effectively destroying the very value they were hired to protect. This $1 test is the ultimate benchmark of a manager's skill.
So, what's the big takeaway from our trip back to 1984? Well, the amazing thing is how all these principles, circle of competence, economic moats, intellectual honesty, and that $1 test, they aren't just relevant today. They're probably more critical now than they've ever been.
Buffett closes out a key section by quoting his mentor, Benjamin Graham. And this really is the philosophy that ties everything together. Stop thinking of stocks as little flashing ticker symbols on a screen and start thinking of them for what they actually are: tiny little pieces of a real business.
So this really presents you with a choice, two different paths you can take as an investor. The market player gets totally lost in the noise, the daily news, the short-term guessing game. But the business owner, the one who's applying these lessons from 1984, they focus on what actually matters: the real value of the business, the quality of its leaders, and its ability to pump out cash for years and years to come.
And that leaves us with one final question that connects right back to that story of hidden costs and true value. When you look at your own investments, are you thinking and acting like a long-term business owner, or are you just renting the suit? The answer might just change how you invest forever. Thanks for joining us.